Actually, JJCouey's insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines. Actually, JJCouey's insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines.
These people are absolutely out there. Yeah. And anybody that's in our space, you kind of have to assume that you are interacting with them at one point or another, usually surreptitiously. So these are the chaos agents, and they're the ones that they so want to work with you and collaborate with you, and you're like,
tell you how brilliant you are.
Yeah, precisely. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's not just the honey trap with the short skirt. There's all kinds of ways to gain the confidence of somebody, and flattery is one of them.
We introduce Jonathan, who's going to talk about his latest kind of distillation of what the pandemic means to society, to biology, to science, and to democracy, and to the whole kind of idea of empiricism and integrity. And then each of us, this incredible preeminent panel that we have, each one of you is going to get a chance to comment on his thesis. I wanted to bring everybody together because I've read Jonathan's thoughts about this. He's one of the most thoughtful critics of the pandemic management from the beginning. He was one of the co-founders of Drastic, which was the organization of independent scientists all over the world, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, did really wonderful work in understanding the science, in unearthing scientific studies that made a lot of this stuff comprehensible. And he's also been instrumental in uncovering some of the involvement of the intelligence agencies and others in the management of the pandemic, and also the long history of what we call gain-of-function science.
There's all kinds of ways to gain the confidence of somebody, and flattery is one of them. There's all kinds of ways to gain the confidence of somebody, and flattery is one of them.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's really important not to be a liar.
I think truth is good for kids. We're so busy lying, we don't even recognize the truth no more in society. We want everybody to feel good. That's not the way life is.
An official Guinness Book of World Records 50-inch max vertical leap at our 2023 dunk contest. This is Darius Dak Clark. Isaiah Espinoza.
Okay, so this is kind of a young guy. He only started jumping a couple years ago. These guys, the other guy broke the world record in 2023, or at least recorded a 50-inch vertical. The world record would be above 50 inches, and so they have this pole, and it's 50 inches above their reach, and so they give you the sort of the numbers all the time. One guy's slightly higher than the other guy in terms of reach, and so the amount they jump is different. But this dude is crazy. Look at this. Now, I would already love to have a 35-inch vertical jump. I'd probably hurt myself, but I would kill, actually, to have a 35-inch vertical jump. Depending on who that was, I would have very, very little qualms Of course I'm joking. So look how easy it is. He's like just ding. So this is really, I think, just amazing how far athleticism has progressed. And I think a lot of this has to do with the internet. It has to do with the collective belief that these records exist and can be broken. And if you can see it and see it over and over and over again, then the understanding of what's possible is just different than if you don't have this access to this, like our parents didn't and like lots of us didn't. The only time you could see NBA basketball was to watch it, you know, on television, and maybe if you recorded it. Oh my gosh, 40 inches. I mean, that's Kobe Bryant had a average 40-inch vertical jump. We're talking about a serious hops, like serious hops.
44 inches, that means 11'9". 11'9" for my man Dak.
The spring, it doesn't even really look real.
11'3" for my man Isaiah Espinosa.
I used to hear stuff in college about people that could take and put quarters, like leave quarters on the top of the backboard, and it never made sense to me. It never made sense to me, but they used to talk about the UNLV players being able to put quarters on the top of the backboard, and that seems like incredible, but not if you see these dudes. Like, because remember, those guys could have a 40-inch vertical and be 6'10". These guys are not 6'10". So what can a 6'10" do?
Which for the average human, that is plenty. That is like, wow, if I could touch 12 feet, I would be very happy.
If I could touch 12 feet, I would go home in an ambulance if I could touch 12 feet. You can't play basketball around normal people, because when you jump like that, you'll inevitably get the legs taken out from under you. Look at how high he goes. No problem with that. Okay, 47 inches for the other boy. He's also very, very impressive. And he doesn't really have any calves. Like, he looks like a guy who could train a lot yet. I mean, imagine if that guy doesn't really jump rope yet.
This is 12'2".
12'2". You see, that's crazy. You got to watch out for your face on the rim then. You might break your teeth. Oh, he missed it. He's going to take another step now. A little more energy. He's been conserving. Ding, 49. I mean, that is just incredible. How do you rebound against a person who can jump 49 inches high? Like, this is kind of like Derrick Rose kind of spring. Oh, he missed too. Now that guy starts to try at the end indeed, but he's got a lot of growing to do yet. I think that's like a kid compared to the other dude. I think the other dude is a little more of a professional and he's been at it for a few more years. This dude, I think he's got a couple more years of training where he's still only going to get stronger. Like, unless he becomes a fat ass, this is flying. He'll be doing 52 next year. Cause see that he got hard. He got a lot of that belt. That was 50 inches right there. Like, that's easy. Damn.
We just bumped it up 1 inch. This is 50 inches.
50 inches. Like, come on. This is absurd. They have to have like a special stick for this because that's crazy. And he's very nice. He cheers for the other dude. It's really cool. I keep trying to tell my gym we need something like this in the gym so people can test what they can touch. I know we have the backboard, but it's kind of nice to have something that you can kind of swing at. The backboard, you can hurt yourself if you got to really learn to jump straight up, which is also good for basketball, but I'm still just saying this is fun. This kind of stuff is fun. They should do this for Olympics, really. This is kind of cool. See, that's like 51. If he got that hard, that's like 51. That's really a lot of bell. That wasn't a little bit of bell. That was a lot of bell. That was impressive. Holy balls. See, because he barely got it. He barely got the bell. The other dude pounded on that bell. Now the other dude pounded on that bell. 51 now. Here we go. 51. Here we go. This dude. I think he got 51 on the last jump. See, because he missed now. That sucks. Because I think he got 51 on the last one. It's like they should have different frequency so you can see how high he's going. Okay, he's going to take one. Nice. Now he's not going to try again? 51. New world record. That's pretty dope. I still think the other guy could probably do it. Look how high he jumps when he bounces. It's crazy. It's like he's got something under him, but he doesn't. That doesn't even make sense. He's gonna try one more time, but he doesn't hit it, unfortunately. I'll spoil it for you. But I'm sure that he did on the first jump. See, I'm sure that he did on the first jump. You could even go back and see it, but we won't. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in a minute.
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time! Woo!
All right, let's get down to work here. I wanted to start out with something fun. I could not believe that video. Like those dudes are like some kind of bionics or something. Like that's old school crazy right there. Those are freaks, jumping jacks indeed. It is Monday. Sorry if you are starting your week, but look forward to the fact that you are starting your week, that you have a job, that you have a way of providing for your family. I don't know how to think positively about it. I don't know how to think positively about my own existence. I just try every day to get up in the morning and count the things that I'm very thankful for, all the blessings that I have in my life. And I hope that you are able to find a way to do that every morning as well. One of the best ways to attempt to do that is to stay off of social media. One of the best ways to ponder what you have in life and how to maximize your contributions to the next generation by planting the trees under whose shade you will not shelter is to get off social media. This is the only non-compliance that really matters, especially with respect to our children. I can say without a doubt that autism spectrum disorder is a myth. It's used to make sure that intramuscular injection is never questioned as a methodology, that virology is never questioned as a science, and that public health is never questioned as a reason. And they have used the same thing they have accomplished the same thing, rather, with regard to these myths of pandemics and of gain of function. The same goals have been accomplished. It is a bamboozlement. It is an enchantment. And if you don't understand why the cheese is free on social media, you will not be able to pull your kids out. You will not be able to see why this illusion about all the biological problems in the world already being answered, why this needs to be broken, why we need to teach our kids a different biology. Hey, there's a the again. That's funny. I thought I got all those. And yeah, so anyway, I'm trying to, spread the word that there are other people on the internet that are working in earnest to try and get to the end zone here. I think, if anything, the recent work of Mark Kulak at HousatonicITS.com has really shown that an independent group of journalists, whatever analysts, whatever you want to call us, is capable of pushing one another in directions and influencing one another's thinking in a way that benefits both and prevents errors from being made on both sides. But it really depends on the independence of it. Shout out to that Substack in Scotland. Sorry about that. I missed that slide. Going a little fast for myself here. That is Biology Phenom. Yeah, Biology Phenom, Biophenom, Substack. It is Biology Phenom, yes, .substack.com. And we are GigaOhmBiological.com. We're Gigaohm Biological on Substack. We are stream.gigaohm.bio on our own PeerTube platform. And we are gigaohm.bio on our own Soapbox platform. And sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm so pessimistic, I think, you know what I ought to do? I ought to just stop streaming on all these other platforms and just only stream to my own PeerTube and only post my videos, on my own channels with my own links. And somehow I have the feeling that would keep me more focused, like this eagle is very focused. You can notice that his eyes are very focused on the biology. And I think America and American citizens need to focus, very much focus. And that means, getting off of social media. It means not taking the bait on social media. That is focus. See the focus? And means loving your neighbor. You got to focus on that. See the focus? If you don't, you can be distracted. This wave of mythology surrounding coronavirus is something we've been surfing for a few years now. And if you're a skilled TV watcher, a skilled social media user, you may indeed have already been overwhelmed by that wave and overwhelmed by the Ukrainian wave and that Gaza-Israel wave and the Iran nuclear wave and the China-Taiwan wave and the Philippines and Chinese island wave and there's a lot of waves. You gotta stay focused. Can't take their bait on social media, and you gotta love your neighbor, your real neighbors, even the ones that are a little goofy because they are the skilled TV watchers, the skilled social media users. You gotta stay focused, because if you don't stay focused, you'll be reading a bunch of, anonymous Substacks and the seemingly endless conversations that occur in their comment sections. My goodness. All these people are working very hard to make these social media platforms relevant around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice that you hear is that of Jonathan Couey. I'm Chief Biologist at Gigaohm Biological. We're coming to you live out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the back of my garage. I used to be a faculty member at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. You can find the stain of that academic work on the National Library of Medicine PubMed website. Under my last name, Couey, C-O-U-E-Y, with my first initials, J.J. Also my nickname from a lot of these people, including those people in Panda that asked me to present 3 times, recorded it, and then didn't put it anywhere. Some Panda members are responsible for the use of my ideas, the shitty use of my ideas on a Substack called Woodhouse 76. You can also find a lot of my work and quotes and stuff in the Wuhan Cover-Up, a book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., published by Children's Health Defense, for whom I've also served as a staff scientist under Brian Hooker and the trader Mary Holland. And I'm also good friends, barbecue buddies with Jay Bhattacharya, now head of NIH. I think these people are all scripted traders, and that's a pretty bold statement to make. And I'm very happy to make it. My wife, my family, our whole life is on the line here. And GigaOhmBiological.com is kind of our headquarters. If you go there, you can find the Scooby link, which will, show you what I was up to in 2021, how fooled I was. You can find the stuff link, and then you can also find a bunch of links to where I am still posting my live shows. But I don't know, maybe I'm not going to do that very much longer. And then you can find a bunch of links on how to get in contact, how to support the stream. And I got to tell you, we need your support, and we need you to share the stream, because sharing the stream is how we win. And that might mean that you need to download the stream. And then, extract the audio file, then send that audio file to your friends. I'm going to start extracting the audio file because the audio file that I get to download from PeerTube is crap. And I don't really know how to fix it. I've been trying to troubleshoot it. I've been trying to get some help troubleshooting it, but that has so far failed, which is another story. And so I have found a strategy with which I can fix this problem, alleviate the problem, and then I can start producing a audio only. Them waves can make you slaves. They can. I mean, just ask Jessica Rose. She's a slave to the waves. Anyway, I'm going to start producing an audio file which I can upload as a podcast on Spotify. I don't know how many people will think that's a great idea. But I'm gonna try that for a little while and see what occurs. Welcome to the bridge, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gigaohm Biological. We are in some kind of weird place where most of reality is distorted by social media, and in fact, the coordinated effort of liars on social media, scripted liars, has allowed humanity in general, governments and organizations to be bamboozled in many different ways. And so, although I got here basically by trying to be a biologist with integrity, I'm now more just kind of an American who's desperate to get his fellow Americans off of social media and to start to establish a worldwide trend where people leave social media and start to establish a spontaneous network, a federated, open source, GitHub sourced social media clone equivalents, like Soapbox, like PeerTube, so that spontaneous networks of patriots and freedom fighters can form. If Mark Kulak had a PeerTube, I would link my PeerTube to it, and it would appear as though there was just another channel. And then, we could mirror each other's videos, for example, so that even some of my videos would be mirrored on his servers and on his websites. There's lots of things that can happen if we start to make redundancies and you start to realize that, that investment isn't very high, especially if you're already invested in a podcast or something like that. And Apple Podcast, says Reginald. Okay, well, because you said it in the chat, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to find out how hard that is, and I bet it's not very hard once I have the MP3, and I'm going to do that for you alone, and that's already enough for me. How's that? Welcome to the show. My name is JJCouey. Good to see you. Welcome. We are still under the same... there's a little dinging going on here. I'm just going to check and make sure it's no immediate problem dingings here. Ding dong dingers. My package was delivered. I wonder which one that is. Anyway, I bet you Mikey was mad about that. We are in a crucial state in America, and I can't stress enough how possible it is that America could snap out of this, and in a way that would allow a sort of mass forgiveness, in the sense of, if we could look at our family and friends and say, hey, we were kind of fooled by this pseudo-conservative movement. We were kind of fooled. We didn't really think that Donald Trump was a hero, but we kind of thought Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was. We kind of thought that Brian Hooker was a good guy, that Mary Holland was a good guy, that Polly Tommy and Andrew Wakefield, these people all kind of fooled us together. And I know it's dumb, but that's what happened. And now we see it. And we are aware now that we're all vulnerable to this governance by social media. And you have to see it too, that actually, although you might not think it's happening on your side, it is. The only question becomes, is your side trying to sustain narratives which are more difficult to sustain? And I think, for example, the narrative of, is this a lab leak or is this a natural virus, took a lot more technical scripting and a lot more coordinated lying over the last 5 years. It was a very carefully orchestrated running of a clock and a titrating of a mythology that brought everybody to the same place, even though they came there by different routes. And that cannot be underestimated as a militarily coordinated exercise, even if it was done by primarily private operators, funded by private untraceable funding, like fake Substack subscriptions or fake book sales, even money laundering through casinos, for all I know. And because this is for the grandchildren of Earth, because they want to invert the sovereignty of our grandchildren, what they need us to do is teach our kids the wrong biology so that our grandchildren are inheriting this very, very fine-tuned and awful set of myths that includes public health, includes intramuscular injection, includes virology, includes maybe a gender spectrum, or at least the malleability of it. And all of these things are being slowly, coercively imposed on our children. And if we're not there as their parents and their elders to protect them, then this coercion will be complete using social media in a way that you cannot underestimate the danger of. And so, in terms of breaking free, I really do think that one of the ways to break free is to try and see the truth, to seek the truth together about this mythology of a lab leak virus that has gone endemic, because endemicity is the myth. And
condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
But there are central myths that are easier to attack. And I think, for example, the idea that all of these no virus people like Andy Kaufman and Tom Cowan, I should have probably paused that, and Christine Massey, you see, the problem with their position is that they haven't gotten here. And anybody that has been doing this for 10 or 15 or even longer has no excuse for not getting here. Because the only possible explanation for both Paul Offit and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., both Peter Hotez and Mary Holland, having arrived at the same place where autism spectrum disorder is a thing, and at least some of it is caused by some component of vaccines which can be injurious. It's impossible. But essentially, that's where we are. That is a mythology. And that is the reason why this recording of Brian Hooker exists, where at some point in 2013, he did not use the word autism. It didn't make any sense to him. If there is such a thing as what this book describes as infantile autism from the Proceedings of Indiana University in 1971, edited by Churchill, Appern, and Demir. If these kids exist, these kids are not the same kids. Just like the movie Rain Man is not about a kid that was injured by a vaccine and put in a home and then later taken out of the home to count cards in Vegas. That's not the kid that Brian Hooker has. That's not what happened to that black lady in Vaxxed who had fraternal twins and gave the shots to one baby and not the other baby, and now the boy is just wrecked. That's not what we're talking about here. And autism spectrum disorder has allowed both the anti-vax movement and the people like Paul Offit and Peter Hotez to run this clock for years, calling each other grifters. This is how we are governed. And once we see and can clearly teach our children how this is done, then social media will be useless to them and unattractive to them, almost repellent. And so not only is this true...
He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged, a condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
And so pandemics and gain of function accomplish the same thing, as I said earlier. And there might even be a better way to say it. I think, I got to be really, I want to be brutal here. Okay. I want to be brutal. I have books over there on the shelf that if you take those books at face value, then you can confirm exactly what Mark has found, which is that, intramuscular injection was not thought of as a great way to administer medicine until around the late 1800s. And then it was still kind of associated with morphine, kind of associated with wounds, like if you want the pain relief of morphine to help somebody with a leg wound, you don't necessarily want to put it in a vein in the arm. Maybe it's better to shoot it in the muscle. That's how this essentially started. In no way, shape, or form was this a methodology to apply medicine internally to a healthy human until around this time. And so it's a bad idea from the late 1800s. That's pretty much a home run right there, that anybody on this bookshelf next to me with a book in the last 10 years could have probably gotten there with a reasonable amount of research. Mark took like a week. And I bet if you asked him, like, what did he spend all of his time on, he would probably tell you it was a ridiculous short amount of time because, number one, he's skilled. Number two, we've been working for 6 years on this problem. And number three, he hasn't made any assumptions yet. He's still listening to me and still trying to understand intramuscular injection is dumb. What is that? What are the brass tacks? When did it start? Why is it that Mark Kulak is the first person to ask that in response to my work? Why in the hell is it Mark Kulak and not Robert F. Kennedy Jr., any employee of CHD, any person that I've ever been on their podcast and they've interviewed me, like, I don't know, Sarah Westall or Kim Iverson or, it's remarkable. No one except for Mark Kulak was able to go in that direction. And that's why you can see that they're all scripted frauds. Even the people fighting for profound autism. Do you see that profound autism and the statements that they made earlier this year about profound autism are actually an admission that I'm right here? They never used the words profound and autism together until 2025, when it finally became apparent that something was going to go wrong here, because autism spectrum disorder admittedly covers a lot of shit. And so they walked you right into that libertarian left hook, my ass. They walked us into on both sides. And the health freedom movement, orchestrated by Kevin McKernan and Robert Malone and Steve Bannon and all the people behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is one of the nastiest tricks and long cons to ever have been played in recent human history. And the only way it was able to be played is because of our acquiescence to social media. And that's the answer to why would there be a fake health freedom movement in America, because it's worth votes. Because it can herd cats. The illusion, the promise can herd many cats. That's why we have a fake health freedom movement, because intramuscular injection as medicine is a dumb idea from the 1800s. And they don't want our kids to know that. Because autism spectrum disorder is a mythology, they don't want our kids to know that. Hell, they don't want us to figure it out. They don't want us to figure out that pandemics and gain of function are just mythologies used to hide this other stuff, including the inversion of our grandkids' sovereignty to experimental animal status. So you got to ask yourself how we got here. We got here because they were telling coordinated lies. Who's they? They are coordinated liars, and they all trust the script that they were given. They stick to it. And they've seen the results of sticking to the script. You cannot change their script. Interacting with them on social media is an illusion. Engaging with them and their, bots are probably just a bunch of Indian people. Not Chinese people, Indian people. These people employ Indians. The Chinese people probably have Chinese bots. There's probably Russian bots too. But these people are using Indian bots. There's no automatic bots. There are no chat bots that are posting in cooperation with Robert Malone. They are just people. And some of those people are these people. It's the way it works. And you don't even need to think that it's always them. It can just be somebody who's got the administrative rights to use their account. Do you really think that David Icke is always on X tweeting all this shit? Or do you think that David Icke has just, been a part of this the whole time, like a little announcer, getting the idea out there into the heads of the people who need the idea and are looking for it? David Icke is a fraud just like any of these other people are frauds, and were put in place a long time ago. The recordings that you're going to see of David Icke start around 2013, 2014, 2015, when all of these people were started to get seated in place. 2011 is when that Australian guy with the black hat is talking into the mic about how there's going to be a new disease and they're going to lock down the world for it. And then what happens in the next 10 years? They put people in place to be ready for this. They scripted a bunch of shit in Samoa. They wrote Rolling Stone articles. They wrote Skyhorse books where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an independent candidate who gets taken as a vice presidential candidate. And that presidential candidate gets shot and he becomes president. These are not random things. These are all admissions that this is one malevolent script with somebody like Steve Bannon up there involved.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people.
And all of these organizations are not spontaneous grassroots organization. The Brownstone, World Council for Health, Heart, Panda, the Medical Doctors for COVID Ethics and the Doctors for COVID Ethics, these are all fractions where for the last 5 years people have been claiming their intellectual property rights to different ideas about how to explain different things and about who came up with the batch idea first or the amyloids first, or it's all just gross. And we all get sucked into it. We all got sucked into it because there's nothing good. I've been trying to get a lawyer in Pennsylvania to help me start a nonprofit for the last 6 months. And every time I've contacted a lawyer, they've said yes, then they never contact me again. I can't explain the pattern. I can only tell you what's happening. I have very little, I don't know what to do. But I do know that we are making progress, and I do know that we are wiping the floor with them. Otherwise, all these things wouldn't be happening. They wouldn't care if I was going to set up a nonprofit or not. But I think they know that a dam is about to break, and I think they know that myself and Mark are people that could break that dam. And so again, I just want to emphasize these people have maintained the illusion, and they're still maintaining that illusion now by sticking to the script that they've been provided. I think it's very likely that Kevin McKernan, maybe Claire Craig, Robert Malone, these people are all involved in the writing of the script. But this illusion is what hides the murder. The ghost of health freedom that will never come to pass because this is really about inverting our sovereignty. This is about a global, network where national governments don't really matter. If Twitter can cancel anybody around the world, if Facebook can cancel anybody around the world, if they can create political movements that don't exist spontaneously, which I'm sure that they can, then, they just have to have a closed door briefing with governments to say, hey, look, we're going to create an uprising throughout your whole country if you don't give in to our needs in terms of regulation or in terms of this or that or the other. And I don't think you can underestimate the potential there and the reason why these people are exclusively on X and exclusively on Substack on the this fake conservative movement side, because those are the social media platforms that these people have been conscripted in terms of, to make them more relevant. The more relevant to German politics Substack authors are, the better for Substack. The more relevant to the media landscape of the UK politics scene that Substack is, the better for Substack. The more relevant Substack writers are to the conservative health freedom movement in America, the more that they can be said to define it. And the same can be said for X, for Telegram, for Signal. And so to their shareholders, and more importantly, maybe to the governments that pay them, use them, contract them, they have over the last 5 years demonstrated their ability to sway people into arguing about what they want them to argue about, to fight about the answers to particular questions. And that power has been sold to the highest bidder. I believe that 100%. And I also believe that governments are attempting to develop their own versions of this technology. And still, the state of the art of this technology will always be the Truman Show. It will always be having somebody like Bobby Kennedy surrounded by people who are on a script that he's unaware of. That's what they attempted to do to me. That's what they do to a lot of people. And you can probably signal to these people that you're willing to be one of these people. But that's not what I was doing. That's not what I did. I made sure that people knew that I meant business. And that's why we find ourselves here now with this ghost of the health freedom movement.
President Trump went through was hard, and it was. The road ahead will not be easy. I can attest personally that in my work as the Director of National Intelligence, the deep state is fighting us every step of the way. And it exists within every single federal agency. And so I feel the same frustration that I see many of you expressing on X or in different platforms about why aren't things going faster? Why aren't we getting results more quickly? I feel this frustration every single day. We are pushing hard. Know that they are pushing hard back.
It's pretty remarkable, right, that we're supposed to believe that Tulsi Gabbard is a hardcore patriot. Tulsi Gabbard, the Hindu, is a hardcore patriot at the head of the Director of National Intelligence. Like Avril Haines, who sat in on this public Event 201 instead of the real Event 201, which happened a year earlier. You can find the real Event 201 at realevent201.com. I mean, this is all just a ghost. It's all just an illusion that they all insist exists. When Brett Weinstein says the health freedom movement, he's conjuring it. It doesn't exist except for on X, because all of these people agree that that's what they're a part of. And now we shouldn't fight. That's the big thing again now. Tucker's really trying to say, I don't want to argue with anybody that's kind of ideologically the same as me. But, some of this stuff is really crazy. I know lots of people have been killed by the shot, yo. And these are all lies. The reason why Brandy Vaughn is dead, the reason why Tony Bark is dead, is because they replaced them with other people that were going to stick to the script. Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn could not be scripted. That's the reality of it. Maybe Joe Rogan couldn't be scripted except for $100 million, so they gave him $100 million. I don't know. Maybe Kim Iverson is pretty expensive too. I have no idea. I just know that if you can't be scripted, you don't rise on social media. You are canceled. You are prevented from spreading or rising on social media. There's no way to describe the level of the lack of growth that I've had over the last 3.5 years. It started to grow just a little bit when I first started, but after that, it's never really gone anywhere. And that's because there's programming. There's programming that allows this guy and all the podcast appearances he's appeared on to be everywhere on the internet. That same with this one, this scripted bullshitter down here about DNA contamination and genetic integration. Do you know if you go on Rumble and you just do Sasha and COVID, you get like 20 hits that are all Sasha Latipova, but if you do Couey and COVID, you don't get me. It's bizarre. You certainly don't get me if you do JJ and COVID. You know, we also have another scripted bullshitter here. Is this going to not play? Maybe this is, I got to check this one and see if they got the animations right on this one. Just probably is running out of memory. And so we have this guy scripted, you know, very much scripted by Robert Malone. He asked me not to use Robert Malone's name in our last in face-to-face conversation. And so I think that's all but an admission at this point that this guy is part of this show. And I don't like having to say it, but I don't think this guy has any loyalty to the America that I love. And I don't think this guy has any loyalty to my family. He doesn't give a shit, that's for sure. Having been my friend for 3 years and barbecue buddy for 3 years, it's not like he signed up to give me $10 a month, even for, 3 months. The skateboarder Rodney Mullen, who I have a skateboard of behind here, Rodney Mullen gave me like $500 a month for like a year and a half. So there are people who have supported me when they could, supported me when I was working, and I'm so grateful for it. But I've had a lot of people fly me around or meet me in places and ask me to do stuff and, ask me to present and, can you come and present to our group again, and never given a dime. It's really weird. I can't explain why this guy is having scripted bullshit about a lab leak and about open publishing fees and open science. I mean, it's absurd. This guy's no business being the head of NIH if Francis Collins is the guy that he's more or less succeeding. That's just frightening. I mean, these two, it's really unfortunate how long people have been trying to tell me this guy's a good guy, this guy's great, he's awesome. For a brief period of time, he said that he didn't think he would use any of the vaccine schedule again. But that's still, for a cardiologist and lifelong, doctor, it's still kind of scripted bullshit, right? Scripted bullshit about a gain-of-function spike protein and how to detox. It's a dangerous game these people are playing because this fraud can't last. This is who they have to be for the rest of their lives. They're never going to be able to say, oh yeah, I was kind of wrong about that spike protein thing. I guess it's just the methodology in general.
Because if you tell the truth, what should happen as a consequence of the truth makes itself manifest in the world. And that's the best possible outcome. But it's also the most adventurous thing that you can do, the most exciting thing you can do, hands down. There's nothing that compares to it. That pathway of maximal responsibility, voluntary responsibility, and truth. And I understand that deeply at a religious level. I understand that that's the symbolic world on which our productive and peaceful culture was properly founded. And I've seen the effect of communicating that to people. Thousands of people, and it's a great privilege to serve that role, but it's also overwhelming. I think it's one of the things that made me, I was ill for quite a long time.
Holy barking Christ, we're gonna have to talk about that Jordan Peterson surrounded video, aren't we? Great. That's just great. And on my beard day, no less. That's my beard's birthday. I don't actually know the exact.
Now, the reason why I want you to see this guy is Cody. It's called Some More News, has a lot of followers, like 1 million, and he's pretty good. Him and his wife are clever. They're very much left of center. But what I want you to see is how set up the conservative movements in our respective countries have been by these people. Because now, of course, Jordan Peterson is one of the flag bearers of the intellectual dark web, of this, heterodoxy, whatever the bullshit they call themselves. And so they're putting them on these kind of podcast sort of goofball shows where these extreme narratives can be, hammered on by both sides, and they can always be made to look like fools. The conservative movement in America is slowly going to be fractionated on all of these different little fault lines, and it's very easy for them to do it.
Annoying reaction videos and the endless cycle of hollow online content that ultimately just distracts us from the real injustices in the world.
Now, I do understand that me making a show about somebody who's making a show about something else is extraordinary, but that's where we live, because this is how we are being governed. We have been set up over time because I guess Jordan Peterson said some clever things in some video clips or wrote a book that some people like. But in the end, he's a mealy-mouthed piece of shit who said that everybody should just take the shot so we could get this over with, and had no principles for more than 2 years. And in fact, the opposite of principles, because he was willing to go on large social media platforms and say that everything and everybody should comply. He went so far as to say that maybe complying would help us get rid of the infectious disease that allows totalitarianism to grow anyway. And so this is really them taking Jordan Peterson and slapping us across the face with him in a kind of pseudo-religious way even, because of course him and Russell Brand are two foreigners who were on stage at the Rescue the Republic thing with Brett Weinstein and all these other shitheads, and both of them are these kind of pseudo-Christians that figured it out when they were adults, but don't seem to have the humility to keep it to themselves, don't seem to have the humility to realize that their journey just began, so maybe they shouldn't be, selling t-shirts and waving flags yet. And yet that's what they do, carrying a cross wrapped in a flag. Now, just a curious side note here. I just thought I'd bring this up because it's just come to my mind right now. I have been collecting on eBay when I find them cheap. Early 1900 and before Bibles. And what I find most interesting to do is to try and find Bibles in alternate languages, especially languages that either I can read or my wife can read, and also languages that I can't read, although those are more difficult to find pre-1900. What's interesting about it is that most of these books actually don't contain what we would call an Old Testament. They actually just contain the New Testament of Jesus Christ. A Dutch one. I even have a Choctaw one. That's right. A New Testament of Jesus Christ in Choctaw. And so it's an interesting thing to think about because, again, one of the things that is occurring here is what is clearly a fake intellectual debate between unwitting participants and Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson playing the role of this amorphous Christian who believes in God, but what kind of God and what do you mean by believe? And his act allows him to be thoroughly dismantled by our friend Cody here.
Until we die. So, Cody reacts! Jordan Peterson on Surrounded! Delicious Ouroboros tale. In fairness to Cody, this video isn't just going to be talking about the Surrounded video, so much as using it to talk about a bunch of stuff and things and crap. One such crap being the uselessness of the Surrounded format itself. After all, probably the first thing you know about this video, assuming you knew about it at all, was that they changed the title from Christian versus 20 Atheists to Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists, right after this clip went viral.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to...
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
To be fair and balanced, He is being a bit of a smartass, isn't he? But that clip really does set the tone for the entire uselessness of the video and of Jordan Peterson himself. They had to change the premise of their video because he wouldn't participate in the way seemingly everyone else agreed to. Also, for some reason, they kept the thumbnail image of Peterson smiling, which will become funnier and funnier as we show more and more clips of Peterson.
And so now the important thing to realize here is that it's an illusion. It was always a scripted illusion. 20 atheists versus a Christian, and the Christian is Jordan Peterson himself, who won't even say what that is or whether he is that. It's you who say that. You know, it's like almost a twisted, ugly, play on the, you're king of the Jews. It's, it's you who says that. It's really hardcore. This is so gross. It's almost
his face as he talks. But they definitely had to change the title because while a video where a Christian who believes in the Bible debates atheists has a clear intent, this video doesn't anymore. It's just 20 atheists versus some guy with some vague thoughts about religion and stories and stuff. There's no clear opposing positions, and it immediately makes the entire thing pointless. Don't watch it. I wish I didn't. This change of title also immediately moves the goalposts for Jordan Peterson. These people presumably sat down thinking they were going to debate a Christian about the specifics of Christian teachings. But Peterson has now presented himself as a sort of amorphous fog where he can choose which parts of Christianity he chooses to defend and which ones he can sort of brush off.
Well, I can't explain the rapture to you because that isn't something I concern myself with, and that's more of a sectarian belief than something that's central to Christianity. Now, there's all sorts of evangelical Protestants who might disagree with that, but that doesn't have anything to do with me.
He does this several times throughout. Someone will say, well, what about the Christian belief in blank? And he'll just say, well, that doesn't interest him. At the same time, he'll constantly cite specific parts of the Bible that do interest him to make a point, such as one story that depicts God as unknowable.
God puts him between two cliffs, so he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience. The God that's defined in that manner, right, is not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that in its essence is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't, in my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story.
Sure. But then he'll later note that he doesn't really know which stories are metaphors or truth or what.
Now, why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this? Because I believe that Cody is another example, although it's somebody you probably won't see in your YouTube feed, of how this is done. Highly produced, well-sponsored, well-meaning people that are unwittingly participating in the creation of and the maintenance of these illusions of consensus about dum-dums and silly ideas, and the conservatives being crazy just like they can do the other way around. This is how we are going to get crushed from within using social media to create illusions of consensus about what the conservative movement in America is, about what conservatives think, about what Christians think, or whatever, I don't know. But it's very, very bad. And it's only possible because of social media. And even this guy is probably, to a certain extent, scripted now. I'm going to let it play for just a little while longer, and then I'm going to show you why I really brought it on.
But I don't know the answer to the questions that you're asking. You know, it's the case that forever when people have been interpreting religious stories,
Now, why is this relevant, you ask? Well, because if you want to be a members-only subscriber to Cody and Just Some News, you can see a special interview with Ro Khanna. It's all about Medicare for all, about Bernie, about economic populism, and about J.D. Vance. So the guy who has this beautiful script, who's been queued up to talk about Jordan Peterson and how ridiculous he is and how silly Christians are and whatever other shit he says, is also paid and given making members-only content where he's allowed to interview Ro Khanna. And I guess you'd have to ask Mark Kulak about who the hell that is. I don't know. He's some Indian guy, I guess. No importance here.
And so we outlined a goal. Now, when we outline goals, sometimes we have to pivot along the journey, but it's good to have goals. When we had a goal of rolling out AI for our scientific reviewers and staff agency-wide by June 30th after a very successful pilot.
Now, we've shown you this before, the scripted bullshit in the background, the scripted bullshit from a couple weeks ago where they were talking about something at the FDA about modernizing things, and this is the introduction that he gave to it. I just want to bring to your attention that he was on Meet the Press or some shit like that this weekend, maybe Face the Nation, and was interviewed for 17 minutes. So 2 weeks later, right, or 3 weeks after this video. So just put it all in context. 5 years of podcasting with these shitheads. Now he's the head of the FDA and the head of the Center for Biologics Evaluation Research is this super clown child over there, Vinayak Prasad. All foreign passport having traitors to our grandchildren.
We hit that goal ahead of schedule and under budget. It's good to have goals. And so one of our biggest goals is to reduce animal testing in a way that's meaningful and continues to protect against public safety.
And so we'll just move on from here and watch this video. I might have to put that title in the background here. I'm going to escape for a second, make sure this is all ready to go. Start with previous, send this to the back, I think is better. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't need to send that to the back. Let's just go.
Okay. Newsmaker this hour, Dr. Marty McCary, the FDA commissioner, marking his first 100 days on the job. It's been a busy few months with many changes at the agency, from vaccines to staffing. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Joe.
Maybe you've been on a few times. I don't remember, but we all went through that period together, obviously, and there's a lot of a look back now at that period. And I was, it's a hot button issue, and sometimes it's tough to talk about. And there's conspiracies and controversies. I think of Novak Djokovic. Right now, he's going to be in the finals, I think, at Wimbledon. And at the time, I wondered about his decision, the decision of tennis. What do we know now, Doctor, in your view, about what we should have done with COVID? Should healthy people have been...
So COVID exists. There were choices to make. We didn't have all the choices available to us at the beginning. Maybe some wrong mistakes were made. Maybe some lies were told. And just hand-waving over 2020 and 2021 until, the shots were out there and people were being pressured. What did we do wrong? Don't talk about 2020. Go ahead, Marty.
Not forced, but strongly coerced to take that. At the time, I thought it was a game changer and a lifesaver.
Well, look, Joe, I had said during the time of the pandemic that if we have vaccine mandates for young, healthy individuals, we were going to see a rise of an anti-vaccine sentiment, and I think that's exactly what happened. We saw a tremendous loss.
So the anti-vaccine sentiment rose because of the mandates, and that's very interesting because the frauds like Brian Hooker and Mary Holland and Larry Cook have all been pushing this idea that we should stop the mandates, and so it's always been, for many, many years, about the mandates. It's never been about the biology, and that's the very big difference between what we are doing here at Gigaohm Biological and all these frauds from ICANN to CHD. That's why we need a 501c3, because we would accomplish something that they can't. Because we would be scoring touchdowns with the biology, not scoring touchdowns on some amorphous legal principle that's even horribly represented by them. Lawyers that don't understand the principle of strict scrutiny or holding the government to it. Lawyers that don't understand liability and what it means. It's just gross. Lawyers that don't understand the difference between implied consent and informed consent, and how one is a legal principle and one is like something else that's not in law. I mean, These people are the worst kind of traitors. They're happy not to know what's going on. They're happy to trust the script.
Loss in public trust. A study in JAMA found that 71% of people trusted their doctors and hospitals before the COVID pandemic, and that's down to 40%.
This is the FDA talking about trust in hospitals and survey numbers about trust in hospitals. He can't barely even speak because he knows he's about to be outed as the traitor and foreign meddler that he is. This is a fraud sitting over the top of an agency that has been gutted by a early retirement offer and by firings to come. There is some serious shit happening here. They are willing to burn it down in order to prevent themselves from being taken to justice, I assure you.
That's a 31-point drop. And I think it was from ignoring natural immunity. I think it was from vaccine mandates insisting that soldiers and fire.
Okay, I got an issue here. How do I do that? Do I have to bring this up? Oh, I do. Shoot. Should be okay. This is a problem because he's on a script and it's very obvious what script he's on if he says natural immunity. So I'm going to go backwards in the video because I want to be sure that we don't miss.
Firefighters and teachers be fired if they don't have the vaccine, even if they were young and healthy. And we found that 71% of people trusted their doctors and hospitals before the COVID pandemic, and that's down to 40%. That's a 31-point drop. And I think it was...
So poll numbers about trust in hospitals. This guy's the FDA, in charge of making sure what is on the label is what's in the bottle, that safe and effective is followed, that, that guy is talking about poll numbers right now. And then listen to this because this is crucial. This is a point you really need to catch. And it needs to hit you hard in the stomach.
It was from ignoring natural immunity. I think it was from vaccine mandates.
Ignoring natural immunity and vaccine mandates. That's why they lost trust in the government. Now, there were a few people in 2020 that were on the natural immunity kick. One of them was the illustrious Michael Yeadon. Mike Yeadon was saying that, I'm a respiratory physiologist and we would have previous immunity to other viruses, so this new virus wouldn't be as dangerous as they say. So Mike Yeadon, from the very beginning, accepted the existence of the novel virus, didn't usefully challenge PCR at all. In fact, let himself be a part of that stupid paper that Claire Craig and Kevin McKernan orchestrated to oppose the Corman-Jorston PCR test used by the WHO. Mike Yeadon is a fraud, and he is a scripted fraud for sure, because Mike Yeadon brought to the table two things very clearly in the beginning, and he brought them to the table usually in front of a CHD microphone, even if he was on the street in London, and that's something that only now becomes very significant to me. But the idea that natural immunity is proof that the virus was there is something to argue about, accepts the existence of the virus. And Mike Yeadon was saying that there is previous immunity to other respiratory diseases because he's a respiratory physiologist who used to work for Pfizer. And so you can trust him on that. And you accepted and I accepted the virus. And in fact, I taught immunology for a year and learned it myself as best I could because I thought I had to understand the mechanisms of natural immunity. So I learned virology. You see? All because Mike Yeadon was a scripted traitor as well. He might not have understood the script that he was sticking to. He might not have understood how malevolent the outcome would be because his advocating for the existence of natural immunity also meant that it was worthwhile to question exactly how dangerous is this virus to you. Maybe it's not so dangerous to Mike Yeadon because he's healthy and has been a respiratory physiologist exposed to a lot of this stuff for his whole life, whereas you might be a frail old lady who might need help from this dangerous virus because Kevin McCarran says, and Charles Rixey says it's the most dangerous and contagious pathogen on Earth ever. The natural immunity mention in this podcast or this interview one day ago is an admission that this is part of the script because that can't keep coming up unless we are on a hamster wheel and the same shit-covered rungs are coming back every 6 months, you know, like natural immunity and herd immunity and circulating antibodies. Come on, guys.
Insisting that soldiers and firefighters and teachers be fired if they don't have the vaccine, even if they were young and healthy and had the infection already. They had circulating antibodies that could neutralize the virus, but they were antibodies the government did not recognize because it failed to recognize natural immunity. So we lost a lot of ground in public trust, and we're trying to rebuild that now through radical transparency and being very honest and telling people the government is not your doctor. Talk to your doctor and get good advice from your doctor's wisdom and judgment.
There are some changes at the Vaccine Advisory Committee that a lot of hand-wringing and consternation about the new members. Is it anti-vax, Doctor, would you say? Or how would you describe your approach to preemptive disease management?
Well, look, I think over at CDC, a different agency, they do have a reconstituted ACIP committee with a diversity of views among people who do believe that vaccines save lives. The past committee had pushed for COVID boosters in young, healthy people. And of course, that is probably why we see such a backlash today. There was never great evidence for repeat boosters in young, healthy children. As a matter of fact, there was a myocarditis risk that was largely downplayed in young males. And I think if you look at the track record of that committee, there's a reason why 85% of healthcare workers did not get a COVID booster last fall. So we are taking an evidence-based.
Think about the shitty questions that he's implying are important. We should be asking questions like, why didn't the majority of healthcare workers get a booster last year? What a stupid question. Why did the majority of Americans not get a booster last year? What a stupid question. There was no evidence for people to get boosters. Seems to imply that there was evidence for the first 2 shots. You have to listen carefully. They talk too fast. The script is too orchestrated at this point. You can just miss it. But the entire script is an enchantment. We may have a crash here.
Approach. Dr. Vinay Prasad and I outlined it in the New England Journal of Medicine, and we're basically saying that there's got to be a risk stratified approach. That is high risk versus low risk. Does a healthy 12-year-old girl today need another 60 doses in her average lifespan? That is a scientific unknown, and we'd like to see a clinical trial before approving the vaccine for that reason.
How does removing the recommendation, though, increase choice, increase the patient's ability to come to a decision with doctors, since so many insurance plans and programs depend on ACIP and CDC recommendations in order to provide the no-cost, low-cost vaccines? Isn't this removing choice effectively from patients?
Now, the promise of this.
So even she agrees that it's about choice. So it's about mandates or choice or freedom. It's not about the biology that is really plain and simple. Intramuscular injection is a dumb idea that originated in the early 1800s. Full stop. We don't need to come up with a real firm psychological model for why it is that after that bad idea started in the late 1800s that it's perpetuated itself until now, unless you just want to say that, you know, at some point the Rockefellers realized that people hadn't figured anything out yet. And so if we just took over right now while people are this stupid, holy shit, we could have this go to in perpetuity. We could manage them. We could depopulate them. We can do whatever we want if they believe intramuscular injection is good. Why not make a bunch of products from my oil or some shit like that? I don't know. We don't need to come up with that explanation. All we need to do is teach our children that that is the history. I have books over there on the shelf that can show it. Mark has articles and PDFs and references that show it, that it's not some kind of brilliant thing that happened at the end of a long evolution of our interaction with ourselves. No. It really originates from trying to treat wounds, really grave wounds, by getting the pain relief local. That's it. And now we're in big trouble.
Secretary Kennedy, is to let people know that vaccines will be available if people want them. You will be able to get a vaccine if you want them. So that's a decision between you and your doctor, and each individual insurance company has their own policy. Look, some insurance companies don't pay for important cancer treatments that for patients that I saw as a cancer surgeon. And so that is another entire issue that's unrelated to the FDA.
Okay, so insurance, so the fact that private insurers, employer-sponsored insurance plans, Medicare Part D, Medicaid, the Vaccines for Children program, all of them link providing no-cost vaccines to CDC and ACIP recommendations. That removing the recommendations doesn't remove in some way the choice.
And don't forget that the FDA is looked to by other countries as well, including places like the Netherlands and Germany. So this is not to be underestimated how much power this puppet actually has. Or let's say the people whose hands are inside of this puppet.
That patients can make, especially the vulnerable patients who may not be able to afford to pay.
That's right. It does not remove the choice. And our job at the FDA is, and this is a charge by Congress, is to look at applications that are submitted to us and determine what is safe and effective. And so that is what we are committed to. I think there was some lost trust in the FDA when there was a new policy that basically said for a young, healthy 15-year-old boy, we were going to rubber stamp a COVID vaccine without a clinical trial every year in perpetuity, and the kid must get it. And I think
so. Here now he's trying to pretend that the issue is that we just gave blanket approval to a COVID shot, and we were going to change it without doing clinical trials. And so that's crazy, man. I want to do clinical trials on the COVID shot. I want to make sure it's safe.
We're saying we're going to be less absolutist when there's no evidence. I think the most dangerous thing you can do in public health is to demand something of a young, healthy individual when the evidence is just not that supportive for a new virus that creates a new protein and a new vaccine that creates a new protein where we haven't had a clinical trial in over 4 years. And those results in children were mixed back 4 years ago.
The basic tenets of MAH, of MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, it seems to be...
So he's also thinks that there is a Make America Healthy Again movement that has tenets. You see, it's one great big enchantment. They are conjuring something that cannot exist without the explicit and complete acquiescence to the use of social media. Otherwise, this is all bullshit. Nobody agrees like that. Nobody.
It's proactive healthcare versus reactive. You'd have to do that with children, I think, and I immediately think about, as a country, our levels of obesity are just much higher than they need to be or should be. What does tackling that entail, and how does it play into these new drugs, and whether you really start, I don't know, is that what we need to do to all our kids with Wegovy or Ozempic or something, doctor? Or what's the answer? Is it foods? Is it additives? Is it... The secretary has a lot of ideas.
Yeah, it's all of the above, Joe, and we've not been talking about root causes in healthcare. I've been in academic medicine and been at all the major institutions giving grand rounds. We don't talk about root causes. We don't ask, why do 40% of our nation's children now have a chronic disease? Why do a third of our nation's children now have prediabetes or diabetes? We've got to talk about school lunch programs, not just putting every 6-year-old on Ozempic. We've got to talk about environmental exposures and chemicals in the food, not just chemotherapy. If you look at the types of cancer that are going up in young people, they are the GI cancers. That is the organ that interfaces with what we eat. So we've got to look at all the chemicals. We are doing an inventory of the 1,000+ chemicals banned in Europe that appear in the U.S. food supply.
He should have Robert Malone do that inventory. He was able to screen all the known nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals in the FDA catalog in a matter of 3 weeks in January of 2020 to come up with celecoxib, famotidine, ivermectin, and remdesivir. He could have helped you. I mean, he did way more than 20,000. Come on, that's cakewalk for Domain.
You saw our action to remove all 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply by next year. We're getting tremendous participation by the food manufacturers. We are looking into baby formula innovation. That recipe the FDA issues hasn't been updated essentially in 30 years. We need more innovation. Moms want baby formula without added sugar, without corn syrup, without seed oils. We need more innovation. It's been a regulatory failure. And
so we need to fix our infant formula. I mean, these are such fringe issues with regard to where we're going, you know, where we should be going, what we should be teaching our kids. It's absolutely effed up.
Asking the big question, why does it take 10 years for a drug to come to market? I mean, that is a giant existential question, and we're going to have to challenge deeply held assumptions to answer it. So we announced our program to reduce animal testing and replace it with computational modeling and organ-on-a-chip technology, whereby drugs can be tested on cell culture medium in a lab with cells from the liver or heart or other organoids. We have a priority pathway now to pilot.
And think about how much easier it will be to justify drugs if you only have to pass a toxicity test, which is based on an AI model system and a culture cell line, you know, under the guise of using less animals. You see how disingenuous this is? It sort of implies that we just use animals willy-nilly in research, and we never did that. Every person in neuroscience is required to take a training almost every year about that kind of thing. There are books about it. There are whole classes that you could take in the Netherlands in Wageningen where you had to go away and stay for a week in order to learn the fine, you know, art of minimizing the number of animals that you use and choosing the least complicated model that required the least amount of moral sacrifices in order to answer the question. We've done this already. The idea of getting rid of animal testing in terms of toxicology and these other things is very, very extraordinary and something that is absolutely in line not with saving the animals, not with thinking about animal rights, not with saving the beagles, but it is with this transition of our grandchildren to experimental animal status. And one of the steps in that transition is to make sure that everybody believes that animals are either useless or conscious or amoral in terms of experimental subjects. So this is all, you know, I'm a guy who is a biologist all the way to the bone, and I don't think there's anything wrong with. I think it's even great to take a child around 12 years old and put a frog in some ether and pin it down on a thing and cut it open while its heart is still beating and its lungs are still beating and its guts are there so that a child can actually see it. Because the imagination is fueled by real experience. And so if you can see the inside of a working frog and move it around a little bit, if you can add some salt, you can start to imagine what's going on in your body very easily and then come to the real important conclusion that you are as fragile as that little frog. A sharp knife away from being wide open. And a deep cut away from being close to dead. I'm not saying you should dissect 100 million frogs, but I am saying that animal experiments are useful. I am saying that animal physiology is a worthwhile endeavor. I don't think that we should just never experiment on anything else because there's nothing to be learned there. Even the knowledge itself justifies the pursuit. Just the knowledge of insects justifies dissecting a few, if only to understand a little bit more about how irreducibly complex the system in which we find ourselves is. And so this is really an infantile idea that we have to reduce or get rid of animal testing is an infantile idea. And it assumes that nothing has ever been done. There is no concern like this in the professional scene that he was actually a part of, he claims, for a very long time. And so it's a horribly disingenuous representation of academia in the Western world. I'm sorry.
Can we get a decision out in weeks instead of a year once that final application is approved? Can we run more continuous trials? And can we use AI more in the review process? We now have AI agency-wide for our reviewers. And yesterday we announced we're going to make our decision letters, including rejection letters for drug, public information so companies don't spin the results and developers can see exactly how the FDA thinks. And that's part of our radical transparency.
So what would be the difference? What about dissecting a chicken that I'm going to eat? I can go there too. It's fine with me. We don't need to use a frog that we're not going to eat. What if I raise a chicken and at some point we're going to eat the chicken? Can I dissect it then? Can we do it then? Because I don't understand this part. Like, I really don't. As a biologist, you know, you could even look at it as a Christian. This was all given to us. We are gardeners. I think that humans, that people were put on this earth to be gardeners. The gardeners of their mind, gardeners of their own body, and gardeners of the plants and animals around them. There's no other explanation for how most animals, even wild ones, are somewhat amenable to petting and scratching and contact. I've had too much experience with captive tigers and lions to know that, yes, animals remain wild in the sense that they have a repertoire of behaviors, just like my teenage boys have a repertoire of behaviors that extends quite wide on the extreme ends. You can kind of hope you never provoke any of these extreme behaviors, but they exist in the spectrum of potential behavior that my teenager has. And yes, that breadth and depth of potential behavior is probably greater and more dangerous in an animal that is directly from the wild or descending from wild animals. But it doesn't change the fact that I'd bet dollars to donuts that if you gave me a wild wolf puppy from birth, you know, and weaned it at 12 weeks after its mom had fed it long enough, that I could raise that animal not to kill my kids and to kill strangers. I mean, that I'm confident of. And so for me, I understand why you think of vivisection as the high school class where there's, you know, frogs and everybody's going to kill one. But in a world where nobody is dissecting their own food anymore, where nobody is raising their own food and doesn't have the respect that it has. You know, if you have a chicken produce eggs for 2 years before you eat it, when you kill that animal, you'll have a very different respect for it. And also you'll have a different respect for the bone broth and for the roast chicken that comes from it. So that's what I mean by vivisection. That's what I mean by dissecting an animal. Again, I'm not suggesting that kids should have an endless supply of frogs that they can play with every day. That's not, I don't mean that at all. I don't mean that they should, you know, progress to cherry bombs and that kind of thing. But what I mean is that there are experiences which, if done correctly, will induce a kind of humility for all life. I don't want to dissect a frog again. Would be the perfect outcome. Right? In my mind, it would be the perfect outcome. It's not going to be the outcome that every kid has. If you say that we're going to kill this chicken and eat it, put it on the barbecue, and the act of killing, you know, might make some kids not want chicken for a little while. I don't know. But we've got to be honest and real with the real world, and we're not there anymore. And that's why this bad biology is so easy to push on kids, because it's so abstract. And their understanding of themselves and the way that they fit into this world is so abstract, and we have to change that, and we have to change it now. We really do.
Agenda.
I wanted to talk to you, Dr. McCary, about the national priority vouchers, which does aim to speed up the approval process after a final drug application is submitted, to get it down to 1 to 2 months as opposed to 10 to 12 months for national priorities. What qualifies as a national priority? I mean, you know, let's say there's an obesity drug that's even better than the ones out on the market. Is that a national priority for the FDA to consider?
So just as I said, they are just here to take all the teeth out of the FDA then. These national vouchers are just taking the teeth out of the FDA. We no longer need to regulate safe and effective before a product comes to market. We'll let a product come to market and then we'll, I guess, pull the pin if we see a signal that indicates it might not be safe and effective. That's the new strategy of the FDA. That's what they're going to do. And that is essentially testing it on people. Just like they did with the vaccine. We're never going to really know until we roll it out, right? So this is the reality. They are inverting our sovereignty into experimental animal status because they, on the inside, are all of the consensus that we've pretty much exhausted all that we can learn from mouse and monkey experiments. And they're really expensive anyway.
Expedited process, what falls into the category?
Great question, Melissa. So it's a large unmet public health need. It is a priority identified as part of a U.S. domestic national priority, like the domestication of manufacturing as a national security issue. And look, the president is very adamant that he would like to see lower drug prices for Americans, and he doesn't like it that Americans are getting ripped off with drugs that are 2, 5, 10 times higher in the United States than in London or France or Germany, other OECD countries. So we are including the affordability of drugs as a national priority. So we have a committee that's set up that will determine which products and companies will get these vouchers as a part of a pilot. Look, we got to try new things. We've got to ask ourselves, why does it take so long for a cure to come to market? And we want to see more cures and meaningful treatments for Americans. We want to see big data used so we can have eyes on a drug immediately after approval and not just wake up 5 years later and say, hey, Vioxx may have killed 38,000 people. Maybe we need to take action. Or opioids may have killed nearly 1 million Americans 19 years after the approval of OxyContin. We're going to be having an incredible post-market surveillance program where we monitor drugs.
I don't know how many of those numbers and what that means. I think he was throwing out something there, but 1 million he was talking about since the approval of OxyContin or something like that. Strange statement to make there. That was a really weird one. Just a fire hose. I don't know who Nicolates Resonant 123. Nicolates Resonant 123. Lots of interesting comments that have nothing to do with bacteria and bacteriophages. Lots of resonant and stuff like that. It's cool stuff. Interesting comments. But yeah, you should post them on the soapbox.
Immediately after approval, using big data and the cloud. And if we do it well, it can actually change the threshold for approval, especially when it comes to rare diseases.
Can you give us an example of a health crisis right now, just so we have an idea of what sorts of drugs, what sorts of companies may be seeking to use this national priority voucher program?
You know, one of the cool things, Melissa, in this job is you get to see potentially promising treatments that are in the pipeline. And I'd like to see a cure for type 1 diabetes. I'd like to see more cancer therapies that apply to stage.
What is that? I mean, a cure? Just remarkable, right? I mean, what does that imply? What is a cure for type 1 diabetes? I think it's a genetic.
For metastatic disease and cancer therapies that result in what we call in medicine a complete pathologic response. That is, the cancer melts away. There already appears to be some therapy.
And of course, again, this is kind of the same. It's on the same tip as the shot has SB40 in it, so it's causing cancer in a lot of people. Now he's got a number of different, ways that they're going to cure cancer. Is he unaware that there's a whole sect of America and Canada and Australia and Europe that thinks ivermectin cures cancer as long as you combine it with something else? It's incredible. Of course this is all bullshit. This is a scripted bullshitter. He was put in place. He's on a script provided by Robert Malone.
That may enable cancers to shrink and go away completely. That is, be eliminated without chemo, surgery, or radiation therapy. I'd like to see a universal flu shot so we don't have to try to guess each year which strain is coming. There are candidates out there. And I'd like to see treatments for neurodegenerative diseases and other disabling diseases. I had an aunt who died of Alzheimer's disease. I'd like to see more in the neurodegenerative space.
A lot of angst and
neurodegenerative space has a lot of these, genetic models of disease, genes tied to to Alzheimer's, genes tied to protein folding, all kinds of bullshit that they have no idea. Notice that Google Fold still hasn't figured out how prions work. Google Fold hasn't explained to us why amyloid plaques form. It's just kind of a joke.
In panic about layoffs at the FDA. I don't, can you, was it bloated? Did it need restructuring? Is 15% a big number in terms of layoffs, doctor? Because there are some people that say it's going to safeguarding the drugs that come into this country, manufactured elsewhere, are at risk now. There's not enough people to monitor. What do you make of that criticism?
That's not true. So there were no layoffs to scientific reviewers or inspectors or our law enforcement division.
And so now he's got to cover all of his bases or cover his ass and not make sure that you don't really think it's too big a deal that some people took early retirement, and not think it's too big a deal that they're firing a lot of people and that will change any way that the organization functions, because they don't want the organization to do anything anymore. They want it to get out of the way. That's why they toured the United States talking to CEOs about what they would like behind closed doors.
At the FDA, we do inspections around the world, and we're leveling the playing field on that front. But there were early retirement.
Are you telling me, Nick, in the chat, Nicolate Resonant 123, that you believe that DNA is a resonant thing and that there's organized water and that electromagnetic radiation is everything, but you also believe in prions? Are you serious? Because if you're serious, then I know all I need to know. Wow, that's pretty hilarious. Fantastic. Thanks for joining the chat. You're probably in the wrong show. You're probably at the wrong broadcast.
And so we're actively
that's
hiring scientific.
That's a remarkable level of broken. If you actually think, for example, I bet you think I have multiple copies of this book because I use them as my left and right supports for when I do calf raises. I don't know how many people have sent me this stupid book, but oh my gosh, like, if you're a guy that would share that book, and you believe that prions also are real, I don't know what to tell you, man, but you got to find better biologists. Better biology coaches is what you need.
Reviewers, normally there's a vacancy rate because there's a turnover in scientific reviewers, but no scientific reviewers were laid off. There were tremendous redundancies in the empire building culture, the fiefdoms of the centers at the FDA, and they became their own, independent organizations, and they had very little accountability. They had their own revenue stream from user fees, and they had redundant services as a result. That is, we had 12 different travel offices. We had
explaining the phenomenon of prion like a bad cord doesn't make the phenomenon real. If you understand it to the level where it's a mathematical relationship between frequencies of vibration, then you should be able to use Google Fold to explain to me exactly where those vibrations are coming from, where those resonances are coming from, and show me how it changes when you change a single amino acid and then it stabilizes and doesn't do that anymore. And that would be ridiculously simple if it was ridiculously simple, like it's just a resonant thing and it's like a chord that's out of tune. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. This is a place for serious thinking, not for clowns.
Had nearly 2,000 HR people and budget and procurement staff. And a lot of it was just because of the center fiefdom culture. So we've consolidated that now to say, if we're going to launch AI for the FDA reviewers, as we recently did, we're going to do it agency-wide. It's not going to be each center independently with their own IT teams.
So AI, again, is this rollout of a machine learning algorithm that supposedly does something that they think is true, is real, is high fidelity, is useful, or maybe the next version will be. And so, again, we're transitioning a bedrock part of our sort of regulatory structure into a free zone of nonsense that includes artificial intelligence being used as a tool, and also modeling an AI being used as a way to screen drugs for their use and marketing. And so an application to the FDA is now transitioning to a ability to market something. All you got to do is just put the application through, and then we'll fast track you to post-marketing surveillance. And of course, the only people who will get this privilege will be the rich and greedy that are already getting that privilege. And so it doesn't really feel like a lot of radical transparency here. It feels like a lot of radical bullshit.
Coming up with a product. Just look at our adverse event reporting systems. They are so clunky, Joe. We have one for...
So clunky. You mean like Jessica Rose said from the beginning of the pandemic, like Epigirl was scripted to do in the sparse pandemic document?
Vaccines called VAERS, one for devices called MAUD. We have VAERS and CARES and FAIRS and Sentinel. We have 10 different adverse event reporting systems, all sort of independently developed. We're going to go to one, and so that way we can have a great user interface and a great database of adverse events that we can use for our post-market surveillance of drugs.
Doctor, I also wanted to ask you about your quest to make the FDA more transparent, and part of that was yesterday releasing more than 200 rejection letters, as you had mentioned before, to the public, so the public can actually see why a drug was rejected, as opposed to getting a press release from the company, which may or may not give the full details or may have spin involved, et cetera. The letters were from 2020 to 2024, and investors at least are wondering if it's going to be more real time, because that's the only way it's really going to be useful.
Yeah, let me be clear, Melissa, it's going to be real time. That was just the initial batch because we need time to do the human redaction of those letters. So I know some media outlets were, hours after our announcement saying, oh, some of the, this is only part of the stack of all the letters. We have thousands of letters that we are redacting. We're going to make them public. Drug developers and inventors are going to be able to go through them and see not just how the FDA thinks, but how one study section of the FDA thinks, the study section of interest. And we're going to be releasing them in real time as we make decisions. And that way shareholders will be able to see exactly what the FDA said. Look, markets like...
I am trying to address your positions. I think your positions are bullshit. I don't think that prions transmit by using frequency, light, and sound and coherence. They're not like out of tune chords, and you're really lost, and you're not going to convince anybody here. In a moment, I'm just going to mute you in the chat because it's ridiculous. What you're saying is ridiculous. What you say you can explain is ridiculous. You just got to stick to what you know and not to these ridiculous ideas for which there's no basis in reality, including prions. Prions have such a large set of textbooks because they are such a large mythology. When people eat other people's brains, it's not very surprising that they might occasionally get sick from it. But it's not a magic folding resonant protein. And if there was a magic folding resonant protein, then Google Fold would have figured it out by now. And just stop clowning. It's so silly.
Predictability.
So I'm gonna transition to a video that I think is very interesting. It is from 2017 at the National Press Club, and it features a Paul Thomas. It features Del Bigtree. It features Brian Hooker. It features this lady right here, Judy Mikovits, and it features this lady right here. I can't remember who that lady is. She's got like gray hair. She's kind of pretty. But first, I'm going to do a brief respite in the form of music. Just a short one. Thank you very much for being here. I'll see you soon.
Day by day, people getting ready easy flowing river, surrounding castles in the sky, and the cloud is growing bigger. Listening for the happy sound that got to let them go. Listen to the music. Listen to the music.
Taught Wiv how to create the coronavirus.
Taught who?
The Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Oh.
So there were grants that Fauci basically boomeranged off of EcoHealth into the WIV because they put a gain of function ban on funding here in the States.
Right. Stop Obama lying! Did that, right?
Obama did that. And so what Fauci's creative way around that was, we'll fund a nonprofit
for the current
called
pandemic.
EcoHealth Alliance run by Peter Daszak, who will launder the money for us into the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Therefore, it's not directly from Fauci to Wuhan. It's going through some intermediary. And through that process, they taught the Wuhan Institute of Virology how to do this seamless no-seum technique, which is a technique of assembling viral genomes. Stop lying! It's a ligation technique that uses a Golden Gate assembly. It's a clever way of putting stuff together so that you can't tell that someone built it necessarily from a laboratory. However,
That's called Golden Gate assembly, not no-seum.
That got them caught, basically. And you should, if you want to hear about that story, you should get Charles Rixey on here. Charles Rixey has helped, RFK write his book about this.
Stop lying!
And Charles Rixey's a Marine, and he's been like a dog on a bone with this problem. And he was the one who leaked the diffuse proposal. Stop lying! So there was a grant that was proposed to the DoD to go build.
I have no responsibility for the current pandemic.
Under the banner of we need to build a vaccine against this, because if we can do it, the Chinese can do it, kind of thing. And the DoD turned down the grant because they thought it was too fucking crazy. You'll have something that'll leak from this. But as anyone who's written grants, I've been involved in writing grants for our company. We got like $30 million in grants from the NIH. You don't apply with a grant not having done 80% of it. It's just you're looking for the last 20%,
right?
Because
I am very happy to be here in the second half of the show. It's a long one today. They are scripted bullshitters, all on Kevin McKernan and Robert Malone's bullshit script. I'm going to briefly escape from here and restart the slide deck one more time. There were a lot of videos in that section, and so sometimes it gets a little heavy on the memory. Ladies and gentlemen,
insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines.
These people are trash. I don't know what to say anything other than that. This man is a fraud. That woman is a fraud. They're both they're clowns. Best case scenario, they're scripted idiots. Worst case scenario, Brett's been lying to his wife about where he gets all of his ideas, and she believes, but he is a scripted jackass traitor to our grandkids, scripted by his brother and his dad. So I'm making the claim that Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn were killed and replaced by Judy Mikovits, Paul Thomas, Brian, and Mary. Why did that fade away? Shit. Hold on 1 second. Escape. And that text box, why are you... I'm just going to remove that. I don't know why that's there. All right. I don't know why that faded. I think Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn were killed and replaced with Judy Mikovits, Paul Thomas, Brian Hooker, Mary Holland, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I think that this video will actually kind of convince you. I might just watch the beginning and then switch to full screen with it a little bit faster because it's like 2 hours. And I'm already here for 2 hours. I might have to just start the stream over again tomorrow and only watch the beginning of this right now, and just slam the first speaker knowing full well that there are several other winners to come before they will put our friend Tony Bark on stage or in front of the podium. Look at the calendar behind the video, ladies and gentlemen. We are a long time from this video, a long time. 1 year to the day after the release of Vaxxed, the movie. In 2017, this is April 1st. Or very close to April 1st, let's say it like that. ICANN was established on April 1st, 2016, on the same day that Vaxxed was released on April 1st, 2016. In the front row there, you see Judy Mikovits, and you see her sitting next to Tony Bark. Oh, yeah. What did I do? Oh, I did that. Oh, sorry, I did this. Great. So we already have it here. Awesome. This should be the start. Actually, I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger.
Check.
Check for 1 second. A. That's A. I want to be B. There we go. That's better. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Doctors for Accountability in Medicine and Media.
Doctors for Accountability in Medicine and Media. I guess that's the title of this meeting. Interesting.
My name is Del Bigtree. My background, I was a producer on the Emmy Award-winning television show, The Doctors.
Is anybody struck by how low energy this is? Holy shit. Must have had indica beforehand.
For 6 years, I spent my career celebrating the best that medicine has to offer, the best science, the best doctors, cutting-edge techniques, new surgeries. I'm a fan of great doctors and great medicine. While working on that show,
This is somebody walking very carefully here. And you can imagine that if Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark are alive and you're trying to orchestrate a replacement exercise, stepping in front of them to create a false health freedom movement, a false anti-vax movement that stands in front of those real activists, then you're going to have to be very careful, especially if the movie's been out for a year and they're on to you. Tony Bark is not in the first Vaxxed movie. Produced by Andrew Wakefield and Polly Tommy and Brian Hooker, right? Remember.
stumbled upon the story of Dr. William Thompson, the whistleblower from the Centers for Disease Control.
The whistleblower from the Centers for Disease Control, the story that supposedly Brian broke, the story that black kids and most importantly black boys are most injured by the vaccine schedule or the MMR or something like that, and the CDC hid the data. And so one possible near future event will be that in September or October, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will reveal that this is the real data, that William Thompson is really that guy, that Brian Hooker is really that guy, and this is what they really found. And it is a racist vaccine schedule, which could fracture the American public if used correctly on social media. I don't know that that's going to happen, but that is a distinct possibility. The foundation mythology of which was laid down already a decade ago. Just trying to show you what you're seeing here.
And prevention that came forward in the fall of 2014 to let us know that the CDC had been corrupted.
2014, it is actually 11 years ago right now. You see? It's been a long con, ladies and gentlemen.
And that they were committing scientific fraud on their vaccine studies, specifically the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and its causal relationship to autism. I made a movie about that, produced it, called Vaxxed, Actually, tomorrow will be the 1-year anniversary of the first premiere of Vaxxed.
So he, like Andrew Wakefield, supposedly risked his mainstream career to speak out about this shit. So he used to be on ABC and is really a mainstream loves medicine thing. But, you know, I decided to give it all up because why?
That began a journey for me, as I think many of the people you're about to hear from today.
What do you mean? The movie began a journey? You mean you didn't even start the journey before the movie? That's a weird thing that he said there. It's almost like somebody asked him to make a movie about something he didn't understand. I might need to replay that part.
That takes you out of what you believed was the foundation in truth and science, and specifically to vaccine research and testing. Once you start asking the appropriate questions about the vaccine program in this nation, and the one that really is promoted all around the world.
What are the appropriate questions? Do you think he's going to list those? I bet he's not. I bet he might indirectly imply that it's lack of placebo testing or the particular adjuvant that nobody cares about. You see, there's no, and this is in 2017, they actually say the same things now a decade later. They might even say it with less specificity depending on what he says in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
You begin a journey that takes you to some very scary realities. These people here today represent some of the people that I've studied and investigated and interviewed for some of my research and the work that I'm doing. They only represent a handful of the many, many doctors across this nation and the world that are standing up now and asking for real accountability in vaccine safety, research, testing, and the promotion of future vaccines and those we're using on our children. I'm going to let them do the talking today, because we live in a nation right now that wants to say the science is settled around vaccines. What that means is we're done. We're saying that we accept a vaccine program that this year will murder children. That's a fact. There will be children who will lose their lives this year to the vaccine program that would have had an otherwise totally normal life, could have gone on to become President of the United States or a future scientist with some great new breakthrough. They will not be here because of this vaccine program. Other children will suffer paralysis. Some will have their brains damaged permanently for life. And recently, I've been asking this question of some fairly high-up officials. And what I say is, how is that where we're settled? And they say, well, science has determined that that's an acceptable casualty. We have an accepted casualty in order to reach herd immunity in the United States of America.
So there is the narrative. That it is a careful weighing of the risks and benefits across society that determines that vaccines work and the trade-offs are worth it. He's not questioning anything. If he believes that kids are killed, I don't hear him saying that now. If he believes that kids are being damaged, I don't hear him saying that now. I hear him saying that it causes autism. You know, he just said it like 5 minutes ago, that a certain part of the MMR causes autism. But now he's saying that kids will die. Is he talking about SIDS that we just, blew the lid off of with Pierre Corey and Steve Kirsch this year? That CHD is supposedly blowing the lid off of this year, when in 2017, he already knew that kids were getting killed from the vaccines, that they were an acceptable casualty to reach the hypothetical concept of herd immunity, which, make no mistake about it, it wasn't accidentally brought out again as a center part of the debate in COVID by accident. These people are on a script. I mean, this guy was Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign manager along with Tony Lyons, ladies and gentlemen. That's not by accident.
So I follow that question with that statement with my own question, which is, please tell me how many children exactly are going to die this year from our vaccine program? Could you please tell me exactly how many children's minds will be ruined for their lives or be paralyzed? And the answer you get from the mainstream medical community is, we don't have the data on that.
You understand, right? They are now talking exclusively about autism and about how we're going to have the cause of autism. But in 2017, he was saying that people died, they get paralyzed, you see, he was talking like Brian Hooker kind of was. We don't need to use the word autism if these people are just getting injured by intramuscular injection. But even Brian Hooker couldn't quite say it. He still had to use the word vaccine. He still uses the word safe vaccines and vaccine safety because he is a scripted traitor. Even in 2017, he was a scripted traitor. Frickin' Polly Tommy and Andrew Wakefield were scripted traitors when they came to America. So of course they were scripted traitors when they made the movie Vaxxed. And of course this guy is a scripted traitor if he was on the campaign for president for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. None of these people ever had any inkling of an idea that they were going to save kids. They were going to get somebody elected president.
So how do we have an acceptable casualty if we don't know what number we're accepting? I think that's the beginning of the first question anybody should be asking right now. So when we live in a nation that says that vaccines are safe.
I think it's a more relevant question to ask, where did we ever get the idea that intramuscular injection was a good way to administer medicine? And that question has been asked and answered in earnest by my friend Mark Kulak. It apparently just came from morphine application during combat wounds and veterinary science. It's fucked up.
Safe and effective, which actually flies in the face of the highest court in the land.
And of course, he's already saying safe and effective, which is the literal mandate of the FDA. So already back in 2017, you can hear the challenge, the undermining, the irrelevance of the FDA being implanted in people's heads in this fake health freedom movement.
And right here in this town, the Supreme Court, which ruled in 2011, made the official statement, vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. I would like to know how the medical community stands in direct opposition to that statement made by the highest court in the land and repeats constantly, vaccines are safe and effective. That duality inside.
It is not by accident that he's saying safe and effective over and over again. It's not by accident that Tony Fauci said it at the beginning of the pandemic. It's not by accident that Kevin McKernan was going on podcasts, including a guy who used to work for the World Bank, to say that the FDA was in the way. It's not by accident that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s dad helped establish the FDA. It's not by accident that Brett Weinstein's dad, alive still, helped establish the modern FDA. It's not by accident.
This nation, between our medical establishment and the highest court in the land, should be the beginning of a question that allows us to have true conversation, open conversation.
It's funny that you say that, Entropy Writer, because after we get through all the other shitheads and they finally let Tony Bark talk, one of the first things that she brings up is the DTaP shot.
About the science of vaccines. If we cannot question science, then it is no longer science. It has become a religion. And much of the way this...
And we're here right now, right? A decade later, people are still talking about it like a religion. It's just dumb. It's just a dumb idea. It's a dumb idea that it looks like maybe this Rockefeller medicine movement maybe fueled it. I don't know. But it's a dumb idea from the late 1800s.
Situation is addressed. This medicine
is addressed. My dog is barking.
This vaccine program is addressed. Is like a religion. If you question it, you are a heretic. If you question why there's a duality between the Supreme Court and the medical establishment, you are a heretic. We are the greatest nation in the world. We have the greatest scientists in the world. And I don't believe we should say the science is settled when lives will be destroyed by a program. We can do better. We must do better. And for any scientist that wants to say they have settled at a place where innocent children's lives will be destroyed, I say, please step out of the way and let the future scientists come in and figure out a way to create immunity in our children, health in our children.
It's okay, Mikey.
that is
Relax.
safe
You don't have to
and
bark.
effective for every single child in this nation and around the world. And until we have achieved that, we must never, ever say we have settled, or we are no longer the greatest nation in the world. We are no longer the greatest scientists in the world, and we no longer have the greatest medical practice and institutions in the world. I think we stand here in the United States of America as a great nation. And these people that are going to speak today are going to move us into the direction that we need to go, which is open dialogue, scientific research, and getting back to the principles of true safety medical testing.
All right, there it is. So you can see they were on a script already in 2017, and they were very carefully trying to displace Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark. We will watch the entirety of this video tomorrow. It's way too late for me to keep this going. I'm just going to sign off. It's been 2 hours and 7 minutes. Remember, there's an irreducibly complex background with a very simple bullshit PCR test timed well with this anticipated rise in all-cause mortality, sculpted using a little manslaughter and lies. That's how we got here. Boy, am I hungry. It's crazy. Again, you can see these people are fake because they don't bring up the population pyramid. They don't bring up this anticipated rise. And they don't try to list and assemble a list of the ways that this anticipated rise in all-cause mortality could have been sculpted with manslaughter and myths and lies and confusion about supplementary oxygen and antibiotics appropriateness and also remdesivir, midazolam, and ventilators, and DNR orders, and all that stuff. All of it combined together means that there was no mystery virus that was very strange that Mary Holland had natural immunity to, or that Mike Yeadon had natural immunity to. Endemicity is a myth that Mike Yeadon is apparently not sophisticated enough to question as a respiratory physiologist, former employee of Pfizer, that Sasha Latipova, who says it was the DOD who did it to us, is not sophisticated enough to get to the point where she could say that endemicity is a myth, both as a process as an endpoint, because she's not there. She's employed to post on Substack comments, bullshit statements, and half-truths. That's why the same pharmaceutical employees, retired people, can't get to the point where they can tell you that placebo would have made it stupid easy, and it would have got rid of all those problematic side effects. That's why they also can't explain to you that using their test to find their ghost don't make the ghost real. That's why they've never gotten there, ladies and gentlemen. They are on a shitty script from Robert Malone. That's why there's a fake anti-vax movement in America and around the world. If you want to wake up, that's where you got to start. You can start right here. Intramuscular injection is a dumb idea from the late 1800s. And autism spectrum disorder and pandemics and gain of function are mythologies used to hide that. I love you very much. See you tomorrow.